have some breaking discoveries to share with you in our journey to understand this scene in iPetgoat2 and how it relates to what we're experiencing this very moment in history. Let's watch. So, we all remember this scene in iPetgoat2, the mother in the hijab head covering with the red nimbus around her head. It took me a lot of digging and research to find out exactly what this was on her head, and I finally came to the conclusion that this is what's called a red nimbus, and it was very popular in classical art going back to the 4th, 5th, and 6th century. This is the Mother and Jesus mosaic. Let me show you. This exists inside of what is called the Hagia Sophia Mosque.
Pope Francis then proceeded to Hagia Sophia, a Christian basilica dedicated to the divine wisdom, which was built by the Emperor Constantine, destroyed several times by fire, and rebuilt in 532 by Justinian. After Constantinople was conquered by Muslim armies in 1453, the Sultan Mehmed II transformed Hagia Sophia into a mosque. In 1935, the founder of modern Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, ordered the building to be turned into a museum. At the end of his visit, Pope Francis inscribed 2 thoughts in the Golden Book. The first, in Greek, reads, "Holy Wisdom of God." The second, in Latin, is taken from Psalm 83. How dear are your tabernacles, O Lord.
This is it here on the left-hand side. The Hagia Sophia Mosque, it could be pronounced Hagia Sophia Mosque, and this is in Turkey. It was the largest building in the world during the time of its construction. And here's the side-by-side with iPetgoat2 in the Mother Mary.
Look there, we've got the same kind of symbology on a Catholic basilica, which is kind of ironic. I'm here today at Washington DC with this big shrine to the Catholic Church here of the Immaculate Conception to have a deeper look at what it's all about. So much symbology in here. The National Shrine of Immaculate Conception. I mean, if that is not revering the Mother. Europa. And look at him, I mean, he's bowing. I've heard so many say they don't revere Mary in that way, the false Mary. But he's bowing to this Ishtar, Isis figure.
On the first day of the year, during the Angelus prayer, Pope Francis wished that every man and woman in the world would be able to welcome God, who has made man.
Oggi la Madonna ci benedice tutti, tutti. Benedice il cammino di ogni uomo e ogni donna in quest'anno che si inizia e che sarà buono proprio nella misura in cui ciascuno avrà colto la bontà di Dio che Gesù è venuto a portare nel mondo.
On the solemnity of Mary, Mother of God, the Pope invited the pilgrims to think especially about Our Lady, greeting her like this.
Che io vorrei che tutti la salutiamo adesso, dicendo per 3 volte Santa Madre di Dio. Insieme, Santa Madre di Dio, Santa Madre di Dio, Santa Madre di Dio.
Now I'm going to read from this book called Queen of Rome, Queen of Islam, Queen of All by Jim Tetlow, Roger Oakland, and Brad Myers. on page 44 and page 45. Why do the people of the East revere the Virgin Mary as Catholicism? Could it be that she is indistinguishable from their own goddesses? Sheen cites the Chinese goddess Kuan Yin as an example of the many Eastern goddesses that are similar to the, quote, Blessed Mother, unquote, of Catholicism.
Look, pillars and archways, all the same designs as the other places, and she's sitting on a foundation stone there, behind these pillars where the veil would be, like in the Holy of Holies again. Same representation, the Mother Goddess, Semiramis, Diana and Child, the False Mary.
Now what you're going to notice is that she is nursing the boy. And of course, Mother Mary nursed the man at the crucifixion. Things came full circle. And so you see this boy wrapped in basically the burial linen. So there's more to this than meets the eye. Now, in looking at and digging into this image, this mosaic, we begin to see a picture emerge. Here is the Encyclopedia Britannica, I believe this is, which actually shows, yeah, this is the Ancient History Encyclopedia. It confirms that this is the Mother Mary and Jesus, the Hagia Sophia Mosque of Turkey. Now we're going to dig into this today, and you're going to see some very crazy synchronicities that relate to exactly what we're experiencing right now. Now, when you look at this image, it was actually inaugurated on March 29th, the 88th day of the year, in 867 AD. The apse mosaics, the Virgin and Child mosaic, was the first of the post-iconoclastic mosaics, inaugurated on March 29th, 867. Now, what is the significance of this? Well, later in the scene in iPetGoat, you're going to see the boy that's in her arms, and he basically presents himself as a whirling dervish. And what these people do, this is the Sufi faith, and they whirl around until they get into some kind of a trance, and then they believe that they're more connected to the spirit realm. It's this swirling, whirling, and look, you actually even see that up here, this spiral effect. And later it's repeated here in iPetGoat2. You're going to see the boy whirling above the mosque. So what I believe now is that this mosque is actually, this is the Hagia Sophia.
In the 13th century, while most Turkish Muslims worshipped in iconic mosques, an entirely new display of praise began to gather a following. Known as the Sema ritual, it was the vision of Sufi master Rumi. The purpose, to honor Allah and chronicle the spiritual path man must take on the journey to enlightenment. Samarkandis from the Mevlevi order of whirling dervishes are the only ones allowed to perform the ceremony. It's captivating for us, but meant for the heavens. A powerful display performed in a trance-like state.
While we whirl, we say Allah. It's the name of the God. We don't think anything about our family, our work, other people, just Allah.
That I showed you the artwork that is housed inside of the Hagia Sophia, which is what we just showed you. Okay. Now, over the years, we were close with this. We named another mosque called the Soleimani Mosque, and it was also on the Golden Horn of Turkey.
And it made us think of the Istanbul location. And on their map, it's called the Golden Horn, and it represents a rhinoceros horn. And then iPet Goat Video has this rhinoceros head and horn that the mosque is sitting on, and Horus rises out of it with the one eye.
That particular mosque is just yards away from the Hagia Sophia, so we were very close. But I want you to look at this. I've got it in slow motion. This is a whirling dervish. It's the Sufi faith. We're going to tie in some other things from history going back to 2013 that also relate very closely to what this is. So this is the mosque here that I believe is being represented. Originally we thought it was the Soleimani Mosque, but it's actually something else. Now this mosque is actually destroyed by bombers, right? They come over in iPetgoat2 and they drop bombs earlier in the animation here. So we named that other mosque the Soleimani Mosque on the Golden Horn of Turkey as the famed iPetgoat2 mosque that was taken out by these munitions. And we base that off of this rhino-like horn protruding from the mosque. You can actually see it in this other scene. You see this horn coming off the front of this thing that looks a lot like a rhinoceros when the jets fly over and drop the munitions on it. Those are square and compasses, by the way. And there you see the rhinoceros horn on the front. So we made the connection this was the rhinoceros horn. So we named the Soleimani Mosque back in 20. So you have to ask yourself, will this come to pass, the destruction of this mosque? Well, historically, this dome was destroyed several times by earthquakes, and it is in a precarious situation right now. It's one of the most visited mosques in the world in Turkey.
This one-time Christian church turned imperial mosque turned museum is said to be the epitome of Byzantine architecture. The Hagia Sophia is a beautiful structure with equally as impressive history. Let's go take a walk. As soon as I walked through the imperial gate into the giant main gallery, I was blown away by its size and design. Our local guide explained how different rulers have dictated the building's religious ties, and it was really cool to see the remnants of each. The incredible city of Istanbul has been home to many civilizations throughout the centuries, and none have been more influential than the powerful Byzantine and Ottoman empires. And some of the unique characteristics of these two cultures live on within the walls of the Hagia Sophia. From there, I headed up the old stone stairs to the horseshoe-shaped upper gallery, where you get a closer view of the impressive ceilings and architecture. From Greek Orthodox to Roman Catholic, and from Christian Basilica to Imperial Mosque, the Hagia Sophia is a beautiful representation of the city around it. Transformed by the empires who called it home, and forever marked with reminders of its rich history.
The Hagia Sophia, as it stands today, was rebuilt by a particular individual called Justinian I. And he was also depicted with this red-looking halo above his head. There's also a mosaic of him inside this mosque. Okay, here he is here with his red halo. Probably close to the same artist created this mosaic. This is all made out of tiny little tiles. And this is Justinian I. Now this was a very interesting character, this Justinian I. Because Trump actually plays into this. Trump was sent a letter from this very mosque. Now what are the odds of this? On the summer solstice eclipse, an Orthodox group begs Trump to save the Hagia Sophia from mosque conversion. Currently, the mosque is actually a museum. They converted it to a museum, and now they're talking about turning it back into a mosque. This story was dated June 21st, the day of the summer solstice eclipse that just happened, and also the day that Donald Trump did his first comeback rally. We covered all that on this channel. It says here, an Orthodox group has sent a letter to President Trump calling on him to intervene to prevent Turkey from turning the Hagia Sophia into a mosque. The Christian website Alatia said, Anthony so-and-so, National Commander of the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, implored Trump to work to prevent this sacrilegious and unnecessary decision in a letter dated June 17th. And it talks about the Hagia Sophia, originally built as a Byzantine cathedral in 537, was turned into a mosque following the Ottoman conquest. We're going to look at all the history of this. So these people made it a point to send this letter out on the summer solstice, and you're about to see why, because this goes very, very deep. So Justinian and Trump, they actually share lots and lots of connections. Much of the iconography that you see, these mosaics, they were actually masked and plastered over the centuries as the Islamic faith took over in this area. They covered it up with Islamic calligraphy. And these were rules and laws, Islamic edicts that happened over the years that ordered all of this imagery that we just showed you to be covered up. And they're just recently now uncovering it. And it's interesting because if you look on the front of the mosque here in iPetGoat, you'll see that they actually show a calligraphy pen. And we saw that, but we didn't know quite what it meant. But now we know. Islamic calligraphy is what covered up much of this mosque. The murals, and as well as the tapestries and all of the mosaics that were inside of this mosque. So now you're seeing the destruction of the dome, and I'm going to show you exactly what that means, because that happened over the years as well. So the Sufi Muslim boy comes out of the top of this, the whirling dervish, and there you see the calligraphy all over the front of this. There's actually a calligraphy pen right there. It's very small at the entrance of this doorway, but you can see the tip of it there. And that's because over the centuries they covered all of this up. Okay. Now we're going to look at some of the specifics of this mosque. The central square of the mosque is 99 Byzantine feet. Now, what is the significance of 99 Byzantine feet? Well, we all know, those of you that have been on this channel, know that 99 is all we've been talking about. 99 and 66, right? Because the 66th floor penthouse of Trump. But here it is right here. The Hagia Sophia is not 100 Byzantine feet, but instead 99. There's more synchronicities. It was inaugurated 2 days after Apollo's birthday. We've been talking all about Apollo, the Apollo eclipse on December 26th. Okay? And here it is, the inauguration, December 27th, just 2 days after Apollo's birthday in 537. But there's more. The main dome collapsed from an earthquake in 558 AD. Here it is right here. Earthquakes in August 553 and on December 14, 557 caused cracks in the main dome. The main dome collapsed completely during a subsequent earthquake on the 7th of May 558, destroying the ambient altar and ciborium. So now you know exactly what you're looking at in this scene from iPetGoat, the collapse of the dome.
Hagia Sophia was the Cathedral of Constantinople. It was the primary church of the Bishop of Constantinople, who became known as its patriarch from the 5th century. This is the third church to have stood on the site. The first one may even have been conceived of by Constantine when he founded Constantinople. That church survived until the early 5th century, when it perished in a fire, and it was replaced by a bigger, more splendid one, the Theodosian Church, which itself was burned down in a huge riot in 532. Justinian set about rebuilding, and Justinian's Hagia Sophia has been standing ever since. All the occupants of Constantinople, of whatever religion, have continued to be amazed by this church and to want to preserve it, to have it for themselves. One of the first things that Mehmed the Conqueror did on taking the city was to declare that this should become a mosque. The church served as the main mosque of the Ottoman Empire until the end of the Ottoman Empire, and then it was converted into a museum and has been such since 1934.
And even now, they're saying that because of water and humidity, that there's all these problems with the repaired dome. That it is basically on the verge of imminent collapse. The building's copper roof had cracked, causing water to leak down over the fragile frescoes and mosaics. Moisture entered from below as well. Rising groundwater had raised the level of the humidity within the monument, creating an unstable environment for stone and paint. So this is the state of the modern Hagia Sophia. Now, my guess is that it's only a matter of time before this collapses, and the dome just happens to be 107 feet in diameter, which of course is the 107, number 107 in the scene about the Florence Nightingale effect in Back to the Future, which is shortened to 17, which is Q.
Florence Nightingale was a pioneer of public health and the founder of modern nursing.
Because of Florence Nightingale, nursing is one of the most regulated and respected professions in the world.
Named after her city of birth, Florence, Italy, Florence Nightingale was born on May 12, 1820, into an upper-class British family.
As a woman of her time and her class, it would have been expected that she would marry, maintain a lovely home, and be a hostess. But Florence Nightingale had very different plans. Though at the time nursing was not a respected profession, Nightingale felt very called to become a nurse.
At age 24, Nightingale defied her parents' expectations to marry a suitable match and left England to study at the Kaiserswerth Hospital in Dusseldorf, Germany.
When she returned from Germany, she took a job as a nurse at a hospital in London, and she was eventually promoted after only a year to be head of nursing there.
She improved sanitary conditions so much that she garnered a reputation as a reformer and as an advocate for public health.
During the Crimean War, the British press made public the horrendous conditions of the wounded soldiers in Turkey. The army turned to Florence Nightingale for help.
Sidney Herbert, Secretary at War, reached out directly to Nightingale. When Nightingale and her band of nurses arrived at Scutari, the hospital in the Crimea, they were shocked at what they found.
The field hospitals were positioned on cesspools of putrid water. Patients were lying in their filth. More soldiers were dying from infections than they were from wounds sustained on the battlefield.
Many of the reforms that Florence Nightingale instituted were quite revolutionary. Nightingale insisted that there be fresh air and water for all the soldiers, that recuperating soldiers receive healthy food to eat to help make them better, and that all of the bandages and sheets and blankets were adequately laundered each day.
By the time she was done, Florence Nightingale had succeeded in reducing the death rate within these military hospitals by 2/3.
Known as the Angel of the Crimea, Nightingale returned to England and received a hero's welcome, a medal from Queen Victoria, and a gift of $250,000. She devoted the rest of her life to effecting change in medical care.
In 1860, Florence Nightingale founded at St. Thomas Hospital in London the Nightingale Training School for Nurses.
She was a pioneer in the use of cutting-edge statistical methods of the time to design hospitals and medical systems to maximize the health of the community at large.
This really helped her to make her message known to the parliamentarians and government agencies who would make important decisions about hospitals and healthcare.
In her later years, Nightingale was officially honored by Germany, France, Norway, and numerous prestigious British societies. She died at her London home on August 13, 1910.
The fact that we have a nursing profession today is in large part thanks to the work of Florence Nightingale.
I'm delighted to be with you all today, in digital spirit, that is, at least. And let me start by reiterating all that has been said so far and paying tribute to the incredible work that NHS staff across the country have been doing to tackle the coronavirus pandemic. Their selfless commitment has touched the hearts of the entire nation. The building you are standing in is yet another example of how people across the country have risen to this unprecedented challenge. The Nightingale hospitals will rightly go down as landmarks in the history of the NHS. And the NHS Nightingale Hospital Birmingham is a wonderful example of Britain pulling together. And having spoken to some of the people who helped build it, hospitals are about the people and not the bricks. NHS staff, armed forces, local governments, and the private sector have collectively stepped up to turn this exhibition centre into a hospital. You all deserve our huge thanks, and you should all be hugely proud of what you have achieved in such a short space of time. I know that the Nightingale Birmingham will provide invaluable resources for hospitals from miles and miles around. This will reassure people across the Midlands that if their local hospitals reach capacity, there will be extra beds available for their loved ones here. I find that very comforting, and I know many other people will too.
Let's look at what Doc Brown had to say about Florence Nightingale. Yes, you heard me correctly. Florence Nightingale mentioned by name in this scene in Back to the Future.
This place is up. Looks brand new.
I remember it, and they won't have kids. You'll be next.
Sounds pretty.
So Marty and Doc Brown walk into the Hill Valley High School.
Weight has nothing to do.
Okay, you got.
So you see, this is, I think this is George McFly, his father, George, right? And he gets picked on.
Very funny. You guys are being real.
So they're kicking him and they're harassing him, and what do we call it? Bullying, right? What is Trump known for? Keep watching.
Sure.
Maybe we were adopted.
Okay, real mature guys. Jesus, didn't that guy ever have hair?
Shape up, man.
Okay, Biff, we pick up my book. So obviously Biff's in the scene. He asks Biff, which is Trump, to pick up his books. He won't.
Pick up my books. That's Strickland.
And you're going to see later in the scene, right across from George McFly, is the number 17 on the door, which is Q, which is Trump.
You want to be a slacker for the rest of your life? Oh. But has your mother ever seen that kid?
I don't know, Doc. I guess you felt sorry for him because her dad hit him with the car.
So his mother hits George in his with his car. His mother feels sorry for George and ends up succumbing, falling in love, whatever you want to call it, because of the Florence Nightingale effect.
He hit me with the car.
That's the Florence Nightingale effect. It happens in hospitals when nurses fall in love with their patients.
Happens in hospitals when nurses fall in love with their patients. Now, we had looked at this scene a couple years ago and pulled out the 17. I think we had already identified the 17 and Biff and tied that into Q. Well, now there's another aspect to this, the Florence Nightingale effect, which I just laid out for you what exactly that means. That this whole thing we're going to, it's probably called Project Nightingale. That's my guess. I don't know that. But think about it. They wanted us all to fall in love with the nurses. They're heroes, right? You drive down, I just drove through 7 states, and all you see is signs saying, our heroes, respect our heroes. Do something for your heroes, right? They wanted us all to fall in love with the nurses. They wanted us all together at home. Show you the documentation of this diameter of the actual dome. Now, a lot of mathematics went into the construction of the Hagia Sophia by Justinian. And Justinian's entire, we're going to talk more about Justinian, how he dovetails into Donald Trump, because he's actually being compared to Donald Trump. So it's almost as if they basically predicted, iPetGo2 predicted the Trump presidency, because that's who he's been compared to. Here it is here. The Great Dome of Hagia Sophia is 107 feet in diameter and is only 2 feet thick. So, they say here that it is shaped like a scalloped shell, or the inside of an umbrella, with ribs that extend down from the top down to the base. Let me show you that. Here it is. Why is that significant? Because in this scene in iPetGo2, she is sitting in a scallop shell. Right here, as you can see here. And when you look at the side-by-side, you also see that the image of Mother Mary and Jesus is also sitting in what appears to be a shell. And that's why these images look so identical to one another. Now, here's where we get into deeper thought, because the pearl represents the pure part of an unclean shellfish. You see, the way that a pearl actually grows inside of a shellfish, they think, they're not sure, but there is an impurity, or a piece of sand, or a grain of sand, or something that's inside, finds its way inside of the scallop or clam. And what happens is, or oyster I should say, and some people actually guess that it could be a microorganism that begins the process of how a pearl is created. Now, many of you who are listening right now understand that we have been talking about the pearl inside the seashell for years. And now it's all coming around full circle. Because as calcium gathers around the impurity, it forms shells and layers. Layer upon layer is laid down. Shells within shells. Russian dolls. And that is very similar to exactly the nature and makeup of our reality.